No dilly-dallying today from you two, okay? I was going to bring something up. I know. I was going to bring something up, but I'm like, it could turn into a whole Step Brothers act. We got Kratz and Todd Father today. So here's what I'm actually going to do. We're going to have a guest join us pretty early on in the show. The latest new show in the FT network is called Cardinal Territory, and Katie Wu, who writes for The Athletic, is going to jump in on the story of the day. So we're going to jump right away to get your take for a few minutes before we get Katie set up, because I actually think this Nolan Arenado John is fascinating. Let's charge
That's
it.
hot. Hey, stay focused, Scott. Charge the mound.
Charging the mound.
So Todd Father, Nolan Arenado had an opportunity to be a Houston Astro. He said no. Maybe I shouldn't start with you because you're not a big Astros guy, but try to take the team out of the picture for a moment and take me inside his brain. Why does he say no?
That's a really, really good question if you want the truth. They've always been a really good team over the past, 10, 15 years. Maybe a little two more years. I would say about 10, 15 years, yeah. I don't know. That's a really good question. I mean, they do have a plethora of pitchers. They have some guys that were injured that are coming back. Kyle Tucker just got traded. I mean, was that his guy? Is he upset over that kind of pickup there? Does he not like playing there? Is there a situation that we don't know about? I mean, there's a whole different types of things that go in somebody's head. We thought he did want to go there, and now he doesn't. I'm not sure. I just don't. I don't know. Because it's not the worst team to go to. I know that, Kratzy.
It's not the worst team to go to, and I get it. They didn't make the playoffs, the way that they normally make the playoffs, but they still did. They still won the division, and I think Nolan's going to be super pissed if he declined this trade that was going to happen if he's stuck on the Cardinals for the entire season. So I think he probably has talked to some other teams. He's hoping other teams have an opportunity. And that's, to me, probably why he didn't. But if I were to say the 1A, that's my 1A excuse, 1B, probably because they lost Tucker and he doesn't want to be, that major of a focal point in the lineup, because I think he can play right now better as a secondary type of player.
I know the Cardinals are pissed about it, at least for now, because they're working hard on getting these trades together. And it only would have taken them putting in $5 million per year for the rest of the contract. And the Astros were going to take the rest of it. Also, I was trying to do some quick tax math, and it looks like $3.5-ish million if you ditch the close to 5% state tax in Missouri and just truck over to Texas. Obviously not a huge deal, I guess, for Nolan. But here's my last thing. Trivia question for you, and then we'll bring in Katie, okay? Who has played the most playoff games in Major League Baseball since 2017?
Alex Bregman.
Alex Bregman, Todd Father, the player that Nolan Arenado would have replaced. Nolan's played 8 playoff games in his career. Bregman has played 99. So if you want to go to a team that's made the playoffs 8 straight years, AL's weaker than NL, I don't know. I feel like I'm making a good sell for Nolan, but let's see what Katie Wu says right now. Covers the St. Louis Cardinals for The Athletic and new host of Cardinal Territory, joining the FT fam. Katie, good to see you, and it's a big day. This is good timing, actually, for Cardinal Territory to get announced, right? What do you think?
Definitely. I mean, I can't find my Redbird hat that AJ had on, but if I did, we totally could have matched. But every time I come on the show, AJ doesn't want to be on with me. So I'm not taking it personally, but I am taking notes.
Also, you can, the good news about being on when he is not here is you can say whatever you want about him, and you don't have to deal with any of it besides, maybe a text message. So yeah, let her rip, go do what you got to do. But there's the QR code for everyone to subscribe to Cardinal Territory. And I know a lot of fans that get the TV channel in St. Louis can also now have a little pod on the go. But Katie, help us figure out what the deal is here with Nolan. I even felt like I kind of saw conflicting reports on if he ever put the Astros on his unofficial list for John Mozeliak. Do you know more about that?
So it's shocker. It's a complicated situation. The Cardinals have been very, very vocal about their intents to trade Arenado. He never demanded a trade, but he was agreeable to the concept, right? We know all of this. He did present the Cardinals with a short list of teams that he would consider. This was at the beginning of the offseason, though. And while the Astros were on it, you think about where the Astros are right now. They traded away Kyle Tucker. If you're pursuing Nolan Arenado, you are assumingly probably no longer in the market for Alex Bregman. That's a different team. The Houston Astros are a completely different team without Tucker and Bregman. So that could have given Nolan some pause. What I do know about the situation is that he did waive or declined to waive his no trade clause on Tuesday. For now, this is not going to stop the two sides from continuing conversations, though it is unclear just how heavily the Astros will pivot away from Arenado or if they will at all. All Nolan said was, "I'm not going to Houston right now." It's not no. It's just no for the time being. And the reason for that is that he still wants to see how his market is going to take hold. You know, he says it's early, or people have said it's early. December 19th probably isn't that early in the grand scheme of the offseason calendar, but his market is still relatively undefined, and it will probably stay that way until Bregman signs. So to me, it was not necessarily about the team not being a good fit. It was more of the timing not being a good fit.
And I think that's what people need to understand too. Like, listen, there's this communication. You don't see this too often when it comes to brass and players. The communication they're having. I think the words are key here right now. I think again, this is helpful for the player. He has an opportunity to say what the heck he wants to do, and I think this is only good for players and for people in baseball. Listen, I'll go to Houston, but I'm gonna set that aside a little bit. I want to see what Boston has to offer. I want to see what the Mets have to offer and a couple other teams. And I think what you're saying is a huge thing for them. They are both in communications, and I think people need to understand that this doesn't happen too often.
No, it doesn't. And you can see both sides, right? It makes sense why the Cardinals are motivated to trade Nolan. President of Baseball Operations John Mozeliak has to figure out the rest of his team. He's also facing some pressure from ownership to bring payroll down. And obviously, trading away $74 million would help bring payroll down. Now, from Nolan's perspective, he has every right to waive his no trade clause, to choose not to. He's earned that right. That's the whole point of giving players a no trade clause. So if he's not feeling right about the situation for whatever reason, he has every right to say, "Hey, I'm not feeling this. Let's look for something different." Or, "Hey, maybe not right now. I'm still interested, but I like to see other things." I can see why it's frustrating for both sides, and I can see why the Cardinals would maybe be a little frustrated here. This is an ideal situation for them, especially because, we talked about this, their intents to bring payroll down. In that agreed upon deal, they were only paying roughly $5 million each year for the remaining 3 years on Arenado's contract. That's going to make John Mozeliak's bosses really happy. But the Cardinals, they're not the only party that has a say in this. Nolan absolutely has a right to say yes or no. And if he's not sure about the timing, if he's not sure about the fit, he doesn't have to say yes.
Who's handling this the best? Or is everybody, this is all cordial and everything's all happy-go-lucky here? Or is there a little bit of angst on either side?
I think it's important to note that Nolan has not said anything publicly, but I will say that it was a little different just covering the Cardinals for so long, having Mo go out and say at the winter meetings what his intentions were. That's not how he usually operates. And for then Joel Wolfe, Nolan's agent, to follow up and basically back up those what Mo said. Then I was like, oh, this is a little strange because these are two parties that don't really necessarily like to negotiate in public. And here they are. So it was always going to be a complicated matter, right? The contract, where the Cardinals are, Nolan having a complete full no trade clause. It was always going to be hard to find a fit. I still think that the Cardinals can. It's just going to be a lot of back and forth. And the more this comes out and the messier it gets, the more interesting it is from a public perception, but it really can't make either party any happier that this is going down the way that it is.
Do you think that he has teams in mind besides the Dodgers that he would instantly say yes to? I know he released that list. It's hard for me to fathom, hey, I don't want the Astros, but for example, I'm okay with the Angels, if he's also saying that he wants to join a contender right away. I know the Dodgers are the dream for a while. And Katie, it seems like that's very unrealistic. I know your colleague Fabian Ardea kind of confirmed that too a few weeks ago. So if that's not the dream scenario and it's not happening for him, do we think if he suddenly gets traded to Boston tomorrow, he'll say yes right away?
See, that's a good question. I think it's going to depend on the market. I mean, the big reason he had some pause with Houston was because his market's not defined. And I think it doesn't matter which team that was on his list came out. Even if it was, take your pick, I think he still might have some sort of pause. The Astros, of course, are a little different because they just traded Kyle Tucker. So it's a different team. That situation has changed. I don't blame Nolan for wanting to see what else is out there because when you think about it, he's going to be 34 years old next year. This is probably, I love that we talk about players who are in their like mid 30s as being the oldest people alive. It's one of my favorite things about baseball. But when you really think about it in the grand scheme of things, it's probably the last time he's going to have a say over his future and where he wants to play. You talked about this before bringing me on. He's played in just 8 playoff games over his entire 12-year career. And since Arenado has come up, he has been adamant about his desires to play in the postseason. So again, I don't fault the guy for trying to make sure that he has the best possible destination for next year. I'm not ruling out him coming back to St. Louis, though I can't imagine that would be good for either side. It's just a complicated matter, guys, and I don't think we're really close to anything being resolved at this point.
Okay, say last question for me for Arenado. Say he gets picked up. What's the backup plan at third base? Do they have a young guy coming up, or they got a veteran guy waiting in the corners? Like who's next in line once this does happen?
So the Cardinals are all in on their youth movement. They're very much let the kids play. They'll have Nolan Gorman at third. He came up as a top prospect as a third baseman, moved to second base. They have Brendan Donovan. He can play everywhere, but he profiles really well as a third baseman. Jordan Walker, though he, like Gorman, came up as a third baseman, they're going to keep him in the outfield for now. But they have options. Thomas Ajayce is another young up-and-comer in AAA. He saw a little bit of big league action at the end of the year. The big point for the Cardinals in 2025 is playing as many of their young players as possible because they want to know who they have internally. They want to know what their next core looks like, right? You think about when the Cardinals were really good about 10, 12 years ago, they had that Memphis Mafia with Daniel Descalso, John Jay, Alan Craig, go on, you name it. That's what they're trying to build again. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is by playing the young kids every day. So they won't go out and have a veteran stopgap. They won't go sign someone off of free agency. They will promote internally and see what they have if they do actually trade Nolan Arenado.
Katie, they had Yadier Molina. Yadier Molina helped the Memphis Mafia assimilate into the big leagues. He didn't allow the coaches to get in the way. Tony La Russa, get out of the way. Mike Matheny, get out of the way. He'll take care of it. The org has to pick stuff up. So I'm going to go with another org mistake. And is it a mistake or is it kind of how the whole thing worked out? Wilson Contreras is now going to go play first base. Is that because they tried to shop him and realized that nobody wants him as a catcher? Or is that because, he's going to help all these young guys develop in the big leagues and be that leader at first base?
Yeah, probably neither. I know they didn't really want to trade Contreras, and he has a full no trade clause anyway. So even if they did, you're seeing how that works out for them. They liked him at first base because they like his bat. And when they signed Contreras, for whatever reason, they were a little bit surprised that his catching was behind Yadier Molina. And that's no knock on Contreras. That's praise to Yadi. But they also watched Contreras play in the division, 18 times a year for 7+ years. So the fact that they were surprised is their own fault. But Contreras' bat has always played, especially when healthy. So moving him to first base will, assumingly, keep him healthy, fingers crossed. And they have those 2 young catchers in Pedro Pajes and Ivan Herrera, who they want to see. This goes back to our earlier point in playing the kids. They want to see what they can do every day. So moving Contreras to first, that was a no-brainer for the organization once they informed Paul Goldschmidt at the end of the season they wouldn't be bringing him back. To me, it's more of the organization is trying to find the best combination of players that they have internally in 25 so that when Chaim Bloom takes over for Mo in 2026, they have that core established and they can augment the club after that. The only way they're going to figure out what they have is by playing the pieces that they have every day. So that kind of played into Contreras' move to first base.
Katie, I'm trying to figure out if this team can kind of mess around, not do much, and still be a playoff contender because they aren't in one of the stronger divisions, at least going into this year. In baseball, it doesn't look like the Pirates are working on their big league roster much. Reds had kind of a weird year. Obviously, the Cubs just got better with the Kyle Tucker addition, and the Brewers won the division easily, but they've lost some big guys. Anyway, so do you think if they can't figure out a deal for Nolan Arenado, they can't figure out a way to make him happy and get what they want via trade, that they would have to go down to other players on the roster that could also affect what happens next season. Like I think it was in your article talking about players like Miles Michaelis and even Sonny Gray. For me, I'm like, Katie, if Sonny Gray gets traded, now you're really in trouble as a rotation heading into next year. His value is much higher than Nolan's is, frankly, in my mind right now, given that they have a replacement for Nolan.
Yeah, that's exactly what would happen. Because if the Cardinals end up not trading Arenado, they still, per ownership, have to cut payroll. So they'll pivot to members of the starting rotation. The good news for Sonny Gray is he has a full no trade clause. The Cardinals just give those away, apparently, and has told the Cardinals in the beginning of the offseason that he would prefer to stay. Miles Michaelis, also full no trade clause. Unfortunately for the Cardinals, those are the two starting pitchers that are making the most money. Miles is making nearly $18 million, Sonny over $20 million next year, $25 million, I should say. The two pitchers that they would pivot to are Steven Matz and Erik Fedde, and the Cardinals really don't want to move Erik Fedde, at least not in the beginning of the season. He's only due $7.5 million. Matz, they've been shopping around. They've been seeing interest. He's due $12 million. Both Erik Fedde and Steven Matz are on expiring deals. So we've seen the price of starting pitching. We've seen what trade packages could land. It's a good way to maybe offload salary if you have to, though it's certainly not the way the Cardinals want to do it. That is their plan B, and they're really hoping that they don't have to use it.
What a non-Cardinals offseason we have so far. But with this offseason, the new GM is going to be Chaim Bloom. Is the reason, or have you heard the reason that he is not the GM this year? Is it because of, was that a Chaim? Like, did he not want to come in and do the same thing he did in Boston? First thing he had to do was trade Mookie Betts. So this offseason would have been him just axing everybody and he would look like the bad guy? Or was this something that Mo said, no, I got to do this on my way out?
The Cardinals or Chaim Bloom have never outright said that, but that is a great point. I can't imagine that would be an amazing start to anyone's tenure. And Chaim Bloom has already had that happen in Boston. I think this is an organization decision. The Cardinals, they try to be as methodical. They don't like surprises. They don't like any kind of disruption to their routine. Very Cardinal way. So Mo has one more year left on his contract. And what he's done for the organization, what he's done for ownership, I think sometimes gets downplayed because of the lack of success for the Cardinals over the last 2 years. Baseball is a very what have you done for me right now business, and everyone understands that. But the Cardinals would like to see Mo finish his tenure, because while they're dealing with this mess on their major league roster, they're also completely overhauling their player development system. We've talked about this before, and that's what Chaim Bloom is going to start with, because his background in player development is top notch. He comes up through the Rays, his time with the Red Sox. You see what he's done with that farm system is now suddenly in the big leagues, and you're starting to see that come to fruition. So Chaim Bloom is the perfect person to jumpstart an desperately needed overhaul of the Cardinals' very outdated player development system. So by giving him 1 year to focus on that, the hope is by 2026, Mo has done what he has to do for the roster to get it in a good place. Chaim has spent a year getting to know the minor leagues, the farm system, the prospects, and come the start of next season, or next season, I should say, it'll be more of a coming together instead of everyone scrambling to do different jobs at one time. So I see the big picture idea. It's not very orthodox, but I understand why the Cardinals went the way that they did in this regard.
I think Scott might be trying to talk, but he's muted.
Oh, we lost you, Scotty.
He's muted. This is what happens. He's the beauty of our show, and sometimes people don't want to hear him, so they just get to see him, and it really raises our ratings. But first, while we have a chance, I want to say awesome job on your first show.
Thank
Katie,
you.
with the Cardinals territory, you guys killed it. You and Trevor.
Yes, we started out, we were both like, hey, you know what? We don't really know what's going on. So in our test episode, let's just wing it. And then after we were like, once we figure this out, maybe. So shout out to Trevor. He is very, very new to the media side, but you can't tell. He's a natural. And if you guys are not familiar, we just launched Cardinal Territory earlier in the week. We will have a new episode out later today. I'm pretty excited about it. And I'm just happy to be a part of the Foul Territory fam.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Am I back, by the way, or no?
Oh, yeah, you're back.
All right. Hey, and there's Katie and Trevor. So go check out the show. You can listen wherever you listen to your pods. And you can also check it out on YouTube, off to a super strong start. The Cardinals fan base is large. They've been waiting for this. So, Katie, thank you. Appreciate the time. Good to see you.
You got it, guys. We will talk soon. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Talk soon. Katie Wu, part of Cardinal Territory, and of course, for The Athletic. Be right back, FT fam. Get some cheery holiday music, and it makes you think, did I do all my holiday shopping? Well, the last minute option for you without having to go into any store, without having to worry about if something's going to ship on time, is to give the gift of Storyworth. So this holiday season, yes, exactly. Just punch your phone a couple times. It'll take you to the cart. And Todd Father, you can get all emotional if you find a family member that knows all the goods, all the history of the fam, and get yourself $10 off your first purchase over at storyworth.com/foul.
I'm into it. I love that. I'm an emotional guy, and
You are.
especially when it comes to family, oh man, tears flowing. So, know a little history, know some stories, some fun times that you might have forgotten. Wrap it all into one with this Storyworth, and you'll never forget them from here on out.
Yeah, so they'll compile your stories and photos with your fam, friends, however you want to do it, into a really nice keepsake hardcover book, and you'll be able to share and revisit all of those stories, obviously, forever. And they do it all for you. So you get the questions. You got to answer the questions, but you'll get those via email. You take your time on it, and then they put the whole thing together for you at the finish line. They've got 35,000 plus 5-star reviews on Trustpilot, millions of stories preserved forever. With Storyworth, you can give yourself a little thoughtful personal gift to one of your family members or friends, and go to storyworth.com/foul for $10 off your first purchase. That's $10 off your first purchase at storyworth.com/foul. Coming up next, the Mets signed Griffin Canning, but still a lot of work to do with their rotation. So we'll get into that. Later on, we're going to talk to Evan Drellich about the salary cap question mark article he just put out there. And then also, if we get a moment, I like this pitch from Michael Lorenzen's agent to be a two-way player and kind of game the system. So we'll be right back. The seams. Ooh, that's a throwback. It's like Charge the Mound Part 2. So a lesser story from the Arenado, but still a signing. The New York Mets going for 1 year, $4.25 million to sign up Griffin Canning. And Kratz, remember, the Braves traded for him, although it ended up just being a money dump of Jorge Soler. They get Canning. I don't know what happened. In my mind, behind the scenes, I'm sure there was a phone call where they're like, hey, can we figure out a settlement before arbitration next year? And maybe they didn't agree on a number, the Braves and Canning, because I wouldn't think they would just trade for him for absolutely zero reason. I mean,
Spot on.
it doesn't work out, and the Mets get him, and it's basically the same price. It's a million less guaranteed, but he's got the million in bonuses.
I think it's great. I think it's awesome for Canning. I think the Braves have in the past, for their ARB guys, have said, hey, you know what? This is what we're going to give you, or the non-tender deadline's tomorrow, so maybe you'll get cut. A way to kind of squash a little bit of salary, but it's not. I mean, they're not squashing them by like millions of dollars, I don't think. But to me, I think it's great for him. He's a big league pitcher, and what a better place to go to than what is starting to become maybe the reclamation project of the Major League Baseball right now for starting pitchers. 1 year in, we'll see.
And I think I'm going to piggyback that last part you say. You see a guy like Luis Severino go over there, all of a sudden have a really good year. Is this the guy they're looking for to kind of kickstart and get going again here? I mean, he's a good pitcher. You never know. Is this their mantra? Is this what the Mets do with pitchers now? Get them fired up, get them rocking, have a good year, fight to get to the playoffs, and go from there. So we will see. Nice pickup for the Mets. They're still moving. You can't be mad at a team for picking up guys and still working. And, as simple as this one was, simple, of course, compared to the big one they got, this is a good pickup for them.
Yeah, it's a depth piece and a little bit of a lottery ticket because he's shown flashes. I think, teams have liked him. The Angels gave him a pretty long leash for a while and just never really consistently put it together. 2 years ago, he's pretty good. He's battled some injuries too. And Kratz, if you're looking at the pitches, the slider actually rates pretty well. The changeup rates pretty well. The fastball gets annihilated. And one of the reports I read was that he's got no deception. And I'm like, wonder if the Mets could show him a story about a guy who created more deception in his delivery last year.
Just saying. I mean, you're talking about a high pick, a guy that had a lot of potential and had success. So why is he not creating deception? Also, he could become a 60-70% off-speed type of guy. You got to remember, he's going to Citi Field. Citi Field's a great place to pitch. It is not we just went over the park adjusted stats the other day. Good place to pitch. Hey, go out and play. Go out and throw your pitches. But we think you need to add a little bit more of this in. You're athletic. Try this. Anytime somebody tried something with your organization and somebody new comes over, they're at least thinking about it. I'm not saying he's going to drop down and throw from another angle like Manaea did, but even just a little tweaks to get yourself a little bit more deception is huge.
All right. So, Todd Father, you brought up how the Mets still have work to do. Lou Merloni, who covers the Red Sox, former big leaguer, has been on this show recently, threw this out there. He said, okay, the Mets signed Soto. They may lose Pete Alonso. They already lost Manaea and Severino, although I'm going to backtrack on that one. Sean Manaea hasn't signed yet. He said their rotation now was replaced with Frankie Montas, Clay Holmes, and now Griffin Canning. Are they a playoff team? Right now, are they a playoff team?
I mean, with the Soto signing, I would say yes, they're a playoff team, just on him alone. I mean, now you think about Montas, he's been injured a lot. Clay Holmes hasn't started in a long time. And Canning, we don't know what we're going to get. So that's where I'm teetering with it. Juan Soto signing is great. No more Pete Alonso. You got Lindor. You got other guys too, and no Jeff McNeil. So I'm saying yes, but there's still a little doubt in my mind. But I am saying yes right now.
The question is right now, then I'm going to say no. Because I get it. Juan is definitely an upgrade over Pete. But you do not know that Clay Holmes and Frankie Montas, whatever you think their projections are, whatever changes they're going to make, are going to be able to step in for what those guys did. You can't count on David Peterson to have another unbelievable stretch like he did coming up from the minor leagues. You just got to – right now, no, not a playoff team. Their starting pitching is not strong enough.
What's the game plan the rest of the offseason? What do you need to see? I mean, they're going to add another couple bullpen arms, but you need one more starter. Does it have to be a big name starter? Do you need either a first or a third baseman so that you can figure out what you're doing, whether it's Pete obviously coming back, and if that doesn't happen, it's maybe a third baseman that then ends up pushing Vientos over to first, which I've been a proponent of, and I know the organization is internally. If they don't sign Pete back, what's the plan here?
I have said all along it needs to be a number one guy. Can Senga be that number one guy? Absolutely. He showed it. But why not have a number one guy to pair with your other number one guy? Now you're a legit team. To me, I think what they're going to do is they're going to try to go hard on the bullpen because you're even seeing what guys in the bullpen are getting paid right now in free agency. It's not a lot. Even if you go with a Tanner Scott type of guy, you're not getting that $250 million like Corbin Burnes is going to get. The lineup's going to be good. I really don't think re-signing Pete is like, oh, we have to, whatever the price is going to be, we got to repay him. And I think that's going to hurt Pete's market a little bit because I think their lineup is going to be strong and I think they have some versatility. But to me, it's going to be in that bullpen because we've heard they have reluctance to sign. David Stearns is reluctant to sign pitchers for anything long term.
Spot on.
Reclamation project rotation, unless they go for a big boy like Burnes, right? I think that he would do deals that are 3 to 4 years for starters. I think he's just trying to shy away from the 7 to 8.
That takes you out of the 1 category. You're not in the if you're not going more than 5 years. I guess you can get. I mean, they got Wheeler for that. So anything over 5 years, to me, you're getting into the 1 category. If you're going to dip into the 2s and 3s, that's fine. Maybe they'll bring Manaea back. I don't think so. Maybe they'll go get Flaherty. But none of those guys, they're not 1s. Sorry.
Right. You're in the Kikuchi territory, the Evaldi territory, right? Guys that signed 3-year contracts in the low 20s. Pivetta, which I could see that being the next one for them.
Really?
I could see Pivetta for I buy Mets or Blue Jays because he's a Canadian. So
they already gave up 1. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe that happens. All right, we'll see. Anyway, more on the Mets. Metsed Up, the pod. Check it out. The show, of course, on YouTube as well, but you can watch and listen wherever you are. We'll get to the Lorenzen story later on. Let's step aside for a moment. We'll come back. We'll hit Hot Corner. Did you know that the potential future owners of the Twins have your back? Yep, it's true. Be right back. Great point in the chat from Mantis. Goes, what if the reclamation pitching projects don't work this year? I know it sounds simple, but part of the magic of the Mets last year was the fact that they just nailed their starting pitching signings. That's not going to happen every time. Injury, underperformance, etc. Sure, a 1 or a 2 could also give you plenty of variance, guys, but if you're signing a bunch of high-risk players, some are going to hit, some not, and you might have a season where you sign 3 or 4 of them and none of them hit.
Yeah.
David Stearns is taking this. The only reason I would say no is if it was somebody brand new coming up with this cockamamie scheme to be like, oh, yeah, we'll just reclamate everybody. We're going to teach them all to throw this slider and we'll put sticky tape on their fingers. David Stearns has done this. David Stearns has done this since 2017, the year before I got there. Patchwork together. The issue that I see is during that time, Corbin Burnes was coming up. Brandon Woodruff was coming up. Freddie Peralta had joined the starting rotation. Like, you're doing it with like Jolice Chassin. You're doing it with different guys each year. So that model does work because you can interchange some of those guys. But to me, it just seems like you're putting a spare tire on a Lamborghini. And I feel like the Mets are a Lamborghini, and not having a 1 in your rotation is a spare tire.
That was good.
Yeah.
And the Mets don't like messing with their Lamborghinis,
Them rolly rolls.
Yeah, them rolly rolls. Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm with you guys. I mean, I looked at the signings last year, and I liked Severino. I was meh on Manaea. We've talked about him a lot. Couldn't really predict what he was doing this year. I think there's potential with Clay Holmes, but could turn him into a number 3 or 4 starter, which would be a huge win for them. I'm not the biggest Montas guy. There's just been a ton of volatility with him with his entire career. That one always makes me nervous. I mean, I know his numbers ticked up, his stuff ticked up with the Brewers, but it was for a small sample size. He's had shoulder injuries in the past. Again, I know it's a 1-year deal, but we'll see. Anyway, we'll swing right back. We'll go over the Phoenix Suns cutting food costs? Why are we talking about that? Let's sizzle. So everyone in Minneapolis is super nervous right now, guys. Any Twins fans? Because they're hoping these billionaire brothers, the Ishbia, I think I'm saying it right,
Yeah,
brothers.
Ishbia.
Yeah,
Yep.
Ishbia brothers take over the Twins. They want them. They own the Suns right now, and they put out a message to their Phoenix Suns fans and said, "Winning starts with our fans. When I walk the concourse at games, there aren't enough food options for families who don't want to spend a lot of money. That needs to change. Today, we're rolling out our $2 value menu for all Suns home games. So look at the menu, the most affordable, fan-friendly menu in the NBA." And our director, Jeremy, also, who's on a different show today, sent me a note and showed me how they're doing some of that in Atlanta at the football stadium as well. But check out that menu, baby. That's the good stuff, Top Father. That's like the old school fast food menu. $2 for a hot dog, $2 for a water is really nice. Like $8.50 before that, and now you're at $2. You just want to keep fans hydrated, keep them in the seats, and also it actually probably gets them out of the seats to the bathroom to buy more concessions. $2 fountain soda, $2 bag of chips, $2 bag of popcorn. And this is why Twins fans are begging for these guys to come over, because the current ownership with the Twins has a portfolio problem, because there's this drinking game you can play, and he says portfolio or revenue like every 5 seconds. And meanwhile, the guys who could take over are like value, fans. They're saying all these words that just sound so much nicer.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think about my son. He loves hot dogs. He'd probably get 4 or 5 of those things down under $10. I mean, that's incredible. I'd take about 6 bags of popcorn because I love popcorn, extra butter. And you could bring your family of 4 or 5 there and spend less than $20 on food and drinks. And I think that is commendable. I think that's great. You see some of the prices on there for water and stuff. It's crazy, how expensive some things are, but that goes with the territory. But this is a good thing they're doing. Good stuff. As a fan now, we appreciate it too. So that's very nice.
I'm not sure Matt's age, but Justin is 47 years old. He is more connected to what people who are actually going to games, going to sporting events, and what they want and what they're actually doing. I mean, 47, he's a few years older than me. And he's going to have ownership in a Twins. If he's going to own part of the Twins organization, he's going to run things to base it on the fact that, hey, this is how I'm going to win. This is what I want to build it up. And I want to build this organization like this. Little stuff like this doesn't get you better players, but it brings more fans out, which means players want to play there, which then puts a better product on the field, which then becomes a gem in a city that, in my opinion, Minneapolis loves their Twins. The poll ads have made them not like their Twins based on how they've been treating them as fans.
Yeah, it's been a long time of suffering too, and just a lot of lies, and it's tough.
True.
So yeah, this group, obviously we like to talk about the good and the bad. This group seems like they've got it going. People in Phoenix really love the brothers that are running the team. And by the way, Kratz, Matt, I think is younger, so he's a few years younger. So he's also mid-40s. He's dialed in. And for these guys, swinging a buck or two one way or another is just not going to make a difference in their life. And they have other investments and other jobs that lead to their success and their income. So they're in this for the long term. This is not a penny stock. This is a long-term financial investment for them and a toy.
It's fun. It's fun for them because if you look at their net worth and everything, everyone wants to talk about all these rich. They're rich. They're billionaires. They're both billionaires. So that's cool. That's awesome. Brother billionaires. But the amount that they paid for the Suns, it's not just a tiny little line item. It's a large item on their net worth list, which to me means they care about this team. They care about owning a team. They care about and enjoy this. Like, this is like fun. This isn't just like, we bought the team for $2 billion, but we have $300 billion in other things. So it's just a little, just make sure those lines don't work out too well. We'll make sure the team just kind of stays afloat, and that's it. To me, they look invested in the Suns So you hope that would happen if they come over to the Twins.
My biggest concern, guys, is that at some point there's going to be such a divide that they are trying to leave out owners that would make the cheapies look bad. That's what I worry about at this point. There was dissension when Steve Cohen was talked about internally. They were like, is Steve Cohen going to enter the league and make us look bad? Should we let this guy buy the Mets, right? I don't know what the talk was about Jorge Mas in Miami, but I was down there during that whole deal, and he's a billionaire who would have treated it like a toy. And I wonder if there was talk about that as well. But my point is, if you're an AL Central owner and you look at what these guys are doing, right? They take over the Suns 5 seconds later, they get Durant. Now they're cutting food prices. You're like, these guys might make us look really bad, and they might make this team into a powerhouse. We could be in a lot of trouble for competitive purposes and for pride and reputation. So just something to keep in mind. It hasn't happened, but also votes happen behind the scenes. When they do the votes, it's 30-0 every time. But I just hope that there's not an internal conversation. They're like, oh, sorry, you guys don't qualify. We just don't feel like you're the right fit.
You hope? You know there's internal conversations. I would back against that. There's definitely internal conversations. They made CBT, they made the tax threshold because of Steve Cohen. When they
No, I know there's internal combos, Kratz. I'm saying I hope that it doesn't rule them out. I hope that it doesn't get. Of course, I know there's internal combos. I hope it doesn't get so contentious at some point, and they look and say, "Hey, remember we were a little iffy on Cohen, and now he's making us look bad. He's rising player salaries. He's doing playoff watch parties where they're taking a loss. They just don't care, about." What the little buck makes on a short-term basis. He's looking to raise the franchise value and just have a good time for the city. So anyway, that's the concern. All right, let's flip it over to Michael Lorenzen's agency and their plan to upsell Lorenzen as a unique ball player, which he certainly is. So Ken Rosenthal wrote about this. We'll ask him about it later this week. But the plan basically, guys, is to get him enough at-bats with a non-contender that by the time we're at the trade deadline, he can be dealt to a contender and help them extend how many pitchers they can have on a team. So the Dodgers have this right now, right? It's basically an Ohtani rule. And the way it works is there's a 13 pitcher limit on each team's 26-man roster, but players can meet a two-way requirement. You need to pitch at least 20 innings and play 20 games as a position player or a DH with at least 3 plate appearances in each game. And then you won't count as one of the pitchers. So that would enable a team to have 14 pitchers instead of 13 pitchers, which is what the Dodgers currently have. So Lorenzen and his agency can make that pitch to teams, right? They can say, hey, someone name a crappy team that's not going to be good this year. Hey, Chicago White Sox, you should sign Michael Lorenzen, let him get himself 60 ABs, 60 plate appearances, and then we can have him get dealt to a contender and they can add another pitcher to their staff for the season. And teams are always looking for that because of how many pitching injuries there are. I actually think it's a good idea. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and he's no slouch either. I mean, from with the Reds when I came up, or when I was playing and he was coming up through the minor leagues, I mean, his batting practice was pretty good. I know he has a couple homers under his belt. It's not like he can't swing. He's just going to have to go back to getting used to the pitching and stuff like that. Interesting. The Shohei Ohtani effect. I mean, what do you call this? I mean, the two-way player, or is it coming back now that they had to make a rule about this whole thing? Guys are going to want to do it more often, and I think this is a really good rule. And if I'm a two-way player now, all of a sudden, I bet those guys back in the day are like, oh, man, this could have been me, blah, blah, blah. But this can only help out the player that is in it, and Michael Lorenzen is definitely a guy who can do both things and do them pretty well if you want the truth.
Why does he need to be sold? Why did he he threw a no-hitter in 2023. He made $8.5 million, and then he had to sign for a Dookie contract at $4.5 million. Like, we had him on the show talking about it, and he was gracious about it. Why does he need to be sold? First of all, no team's doing this. You can't give a man 60 at-bats. You can't find 60 at-bats in a season. That is a lot of at-bats. Like, you're partway into it, and you're like, let's say he makes 20 starts. He makes 20 starts and gets 3 at-bats in those starts. That's not happening. So now he's going to get 2 at-bats. Now you got to find him 20 more games to pinch hit. I don't see it happening. Even there's not enough throwaway at bats in the big leagues. But why does he need to be sold? Why does his agent? What is it about? What do teams see in Michael Lorenzen that they're like, I just don't want what he's putting out there.
It's not that, Kratz. Whoa. All right, you want to read stats? Go ahead, read stats. I'm just saying he's going to sign a deal. I'm just saying it makes him more attractive as a free agent if we're using the White Sox as the example. They DH him in the first half of the season. I mean, they're going to lose 110 games. Who cares? They DH him and they increase his value because it gives you roster flexibility. It basically games the system. And they might change a rule soon after that, but for now, it's a way to make the player more valuable. And when you're looking at players, that's how you evaluate them. Sure, this is a good pitcher, but wait, I can actually carry another pitcher down the stretch. If I acquire him, cool, his value just went up.
Yeah, I think it's.
I agree with what Kratz is saying, but I don't think it's going to be as desirable, but it's going to play a component, if you know what I mean. It's not going to be like, oh man, this is the guy we got to get now, but it's going to be like, all right, well, between Lorenzen and another guy, and they're the same on our pages, and this guy can, help us out in that other standpoint of getting another pitcher on the roster, that kind of deal, then you go with him. But I don't think it's going to be as desirable as, some of us are thinking. That's all. I think it's a good, but I think when you're comparing 2 players or 3 players and you got a guy like Lorenzen, which can help in that factor, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I see a wise guy in the chat like, oh, he's only had 1 AB in whatever amount of years. Okay, but he's capable. This dude can hit. He's not going to give you an embarrassing at bat if you give him 60 plate appearances this year. And actually, on the topic of the White Sox, we have a guest who's joining us later who went over the worst player on each team last year. Martin Maldonado. I don't know if I'll give it away. He had a 15 OPS plus last year for the White Sox.
It's Kratz's favorite guy.
Games he put together. That's worse than Clayton Kershaw at the plate. So to think that Michael Lorenzen's going to ruin the season for the 5 to 7 teams that we know heading into the year are not making the playoffs, it's just another option. That's all. It's just creativity. I thought it was interesting. I get it. You want to sign the pitcher for his value, but and what he brings to the table with his arm, but it's still an extra way to give you a roster advantage. So just throwing that out there.
Agreed.
Right,
if you can do it, it's great, but nobody's going to give him that. They're not going to be able to give him, even the White Sox aren't going to be able to give him 60 at-bats.
Okay, then that's the answer. You're disputing the story and saying, hey, I don't see a team buying into this particular pitch. They're just going to buy into, hey, we like you. Here's a year for 8 to 10 mil, and we sign you for being an arm.
15 mil. Give him 15 mil. He's still 32 years old. If you don't want to go 2 years, to me, I think he needs to be 2 years, 22, but he's proven everything he can.
He's going to be a one-year guy. One-year guy, in my opinion.
And it's got to be 15. You can't pay. Really? You can't pay Frankie Montas. You look up his numbers. You can't pay Frankie Montas that much more than you pay Michael Lorenzen. Just saying.
Agree. I'm not saying you're wrong. And what did Frankie get again? I'm just drawing a blank.
I think he got a raise from last year, like 18
You got
million,
2 years. Montas?
That's right. That's
you got
right.
2 years with an opt-out after year 1. So last year he made 16 mil for Cincinnati. This year, 2 years, 34 million opt-out after year 1.
17.
You got paid.
34. Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah.
Michael Lorenzen. Paid. Pay that man.
You would hope so. You would hope so.
Lastly, the guy who eventually will get paid and kind of feels like he already wants to be a Dodger, but besides the point, Ellie De La Cruz wearing his all-star uniform in the Dominican Republic when he's playing a little ball. He's playing some winter ball. So I'm going to take a twist here, okay? Todd Father, I like it. I think it's funny and fun. But, man, I was not a fan of the uniforms. I'd rather see him just wear a Reds uniform. That'd be great.
Hey, listen, I'm sure if you think about it, all-star, mine would have probably been hanging up on a wall already, but it's different. It's different. Dominican Republic, they will, whatever they got. Hey, you got a game going on? I don't have a uniform. I'm putting on whatever I got in my closet. And guess what? His all-star uniform was probably sitting right there. Probably didn't bring home some of his game pants, which I usually do. at the end of each year, so I have something, just in case I need to do a workout outside or something like that. And away he went. He had the helmet, the gloves, the uniform. Honestly, it's remarkable. This is so fascinating and so cool to think. Like, listen, I know I just made an all-star team and I got the uniform to show it off. No, I'm playing. I don't need to put it on the wall like some people do, like myself, and let everybody know. But this is it's really cool because it goes to show you, man, these guys, a lot of these guys, Dominican, they came up with nothing. And, just to have a uniform, goes to show the pride and what some guys had to go through. And he's going to rock that with the best of them. All-star player, one of the best, in the league right now, showing off. And you know what? I don't care. I got a uniform right here. Let's do it.
He's 22. He's about to turn 23, beginning of the year. It's a kid's game. It's a kid's game played by kind of adults. And this is just a kid's moment. Like, he made the all-star team. Just like when you made the all-star team in the league and they put a star on the side of your hat, you ain't taking that star off. Mm-mm. Like, why do we gotta, like, he's not showing off. He's just having fun. And that wasn't even a winter ball game. I mean, if that's a winter ball game, it's a new stadium that I've never seen before because it looked completely different than anything I played in. But
yeah.
I love every second of it. It is unashamed. He enjoys it. And exactly what you said, Todd, a lot of guys from the Dominican came up with nothing, and other people around there get to experience it with him, and they're loving it just as much as he's loving it.
You guys know I'm a pretty big fan of Elly De La Cruz and the way he plays ball. So when I see this, it just makes me miss watching live baseball games in MLB.
I want more Elly. More Elly.
We're only a couple months away. Elly. All right, when we come back, Evan, Drellich. We got Drellich talking about a potential salary cap. Not as pretty or as fun as watching Elly De La Cruz fly around the bases. Some other teams being brought up, guys, like, I need money. So you don't think a team like the Marlins will say, hey, screw it, we'll let him get the amount of plate appearances he needs? No?
It could be. I just don't think it's going to be as tasteful as you think. That's all.
No, Todd, it's not going to happen. 60 at-bats is a lot of at-bats.
Don't say that.
You didn't listen to me when I'm talking about it.
Don't say that.
Yeah, listen.
Hey, I agree with Scott a lot, and I think he has good points. I'm just saying it's not up here. I think it might be down here with Scott. That's all.
Me?
Yeah, about what you said. I'm not going above and beyond what you think, but I do agree with you. It is interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Exactly.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that, Eric. The Christmas is coming up. Don't do that. Anyway.
Eric, we have a question from Graham. He said he asked Ken on Fair Territory about Profar. I don't know if Ken answered or if they didn't get to it, but he said, where do you guys think Jurickson Profar lands? Does he go back to the Padres? I think he goes to the Padres. I just think it's the perfect spot. He thrives there. He loves it. Remember, he goes to the Rockies for a year in between, and he was almost out of baseball. It went so poorly. Yeah. So I think he's got to be with his boys like Tatis. And I don't want to say hometown discount, but I just feel like the Padres will be the most aggressive for him. He'll be the most aggressive back. Never know. You haven't heard a peep about him yet.
That was what I was going to say. You haven't heard a peep about him, so I feel like that means he's just going to go back to where he was. He understands what happens when you go to an organization that stinks and you stink. And he had his best year. He was a huge part. He was a huge part of that team. I 100% agree with you. It's Padres or nothing else. And I don't think he's taking a hometown discount. I think he's just going to get that because I don't know that there's going to be a ton of suitors that are going to match what the Padres will give him. Because I think the Padres want him too. It's not just a one-way thing.
Yeah, I agree. I hope he goes back to San Diego for all purposes. It's fun. Unless you're a team that wants him. But I think that was the spot. All right, we got to swing back and get to Evan Drellich. We're going to talk salary cap and all the business happening between MLB, Players Association, collective bargaining agreement, the A's being forced to spend, all that stuff. Evan is the king on these topics. Here we go. Evan Drellich joining us right now, writer for The Athletic. And Evan, you're giving us a little outside.
I love it.
Outside
I'm on
cold
the
freeze.
street in Manhattan.
Yeah.
I've never done a hit that would be crazier looking, but I hope it's good enough for you guys.
It's
Yes.
sick.
So far, so
love
good. It
that.
looks really nice. We get to see everybody doing their last minute Christmas shopping. So if there's panicked faces behind Evan, it's not because they're hearing him talk about the next collective bargaining agreement and his latest article about if there could be a fight over a salary cap. Here it is, the big question looming over MLB. Will owners take up the fight for a salary cap? This is the good stuff. When I see these articles come out from Evan, it's the first thing I get excited, get a little breakfast or lunch and just sit back, watch this or read this article. So we're not going to get to everything. So I encourage everyone to check it out. But Evan, let's just start with this percentage chance that you think this becomes a legit fight next time around. Obviously they can spend some time on it, but it just seems like both sides, are so firm on not giving up a floor, not giving up a cap. And I saw your Tony Clark quote in there from 2023, which reminded everyone that, there's no chance, at least in his mind, that they're going to give that up in any way.
My personal opinion sitting here today is that it will not be worth the amount of pain that would be required to get to a cap. I think the decision the owners have to make is basically, are you willing to wait out a year? Unless they get some feeling that the players all of a sudden, against everything they've historically stood for, want a cap. You're looking at a very long work stoppage. The game is actually in a better place than it's been in recent years. The pitch clock's had good effects. The industry revenues are around 12 billion this year. 2 years from now, maybe it's climbing up toward 13 billion. They more or less split that amongst themselves. It's just so much money you'd have to walk away from to get to that system the owners want, that I can't really see it as a rational decision. That said, that doesn't mean they wouldn't do it. That doesn't mean they wouldn't look around. We have some new owners and go, you know what? We can win this fight. We can do the thing that the other owners never were able to do. So that's what. Sorry, guys, I got to move. So it seems unlikely to me, but who knows, right? Who knows how they're feeling?
So here's my question. It's all salary cap seems to come up all the time, and owners and they have these conversations. One, I don't think it'll ever happen. Two, when Manfred makes up a rule, per se, like the pitch clock, the players and the union come up and say, we don't want to do it. Then next year they can just implement it, right? And isn't that how that always has happened with these owners and stuff? But they cannot do it with salary cap. Is that what we're talking about here? So I'm on the same page. They cannot, right?
Yeah. This is a collectively bargained matter. I mean, anything related to economics in the sport, they have to agree on. That's the CBA bargaining every 5 years. And so, one of the topics is revenue sharing, and one of the reasons the owners would want a cap here is because Manfred wants to change the way revenues are shared to change TV rights. We've got everything going on with the RSNs and Diamond Sports bankruptcy. He wants the league office to take control. He wants the local TV money to be shared equally amongst all the teams. That's not something every team, particularly the big market teams, are going to want to do. So what do you give your big market teams and get everybody on board with? Hey, we'll give you a cap. And even besides that, look, the owners have always wanted it. It's a limit on spending. It's cost control. The other sports leagues haven't. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is not something they could in any way do on their own. The only little caveat there is there's some technical stuff in labor law where if you're bargaining and you get to impasse, management has a legal right to try to implement what it wants. They tried to do that in 1994, the 95 strike. Did not work. So no, the short answer is no, they can't do it on their own.
All right. Well, then I need to do something that I would never do when I was part of the Players Association. Let's say a salary cap is instituted. You can't get one thing without giving up something else, and the players are so against it. Would we see something implemented like you're a free agent in 3 years instead of 6 years if there's a salary cap, because the owners have to give something monumental and huge to the players for them to even take a shred of thought about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, things that the players have wanted, getting arbitration earlier, getting the free agency earlier, does become easier in that context. But the belief over at the union and amongst players historically is that even if at the start of a cap system, you are getting things that are better than what you had before. You formally split revenues in a cap system. Right? The players get, let's say, 55% or 52%. The number you start out with could be very good. What then happens over time, and if you look back at lockouts in the other sports, this has been a large part of the fights they've had, is that you fight over the percentage. If you start at 52, well, the next time around, the owners are going to say, you know what, we really think you should be at 50. And the next time around, it's at 48. And there's all sorts of other things that go with it. Money has to go into escrow. If the league has a real downturn, contracts in baseball are guaranteed. If you go into that system where you're tying salaries to revenues, the changes in baseball. I don't know if it's right to say it totally goes away, but you're not guaranteed that number. It's dependent upon what actually goes on in the sport in a given year. So yes, there are things that you could do with the system that you couldn't do otherwise, but it's still not something the players historically have wanted.
Okay, so can you still hear us, Evan, or maybe we're resetting?
I got you guys.
He does. His screen froze for a sec. We'll see if it comes back. But you can go ahead, Kratz. You can ask the question.
Also ask. We got good audio. The audio is good.
Yeah, good.
Is there a chance that the owners open their books then? Like, would that change because it would be a cap system, that they would actually open their books, or is that the one thing that owners is always completely off the table?
So this is somebody's got a leaf blower above me if you see some leaves falling. This is a misconception. I saw a commenter on the story I did today asking about this. The league has to provide pretty detailed financial information to the union right now. The reason we don't hear about it is because it has to be kept confidential. But it's not as though the way these teams are operating are totally in the dark from the union. The union lawyers, and I guess by extension players, if they were to ask, do have access to the books. Now, could there be more information that you would glean in that system? Possibly. But one of the things in general that when you have a collective bargaining agreement in place, this is true outside of baseball, there is a requirement that management shares some financial information. So I think it basically is kind of a moot point because they already have stuff now. You wouldn't give away something that you think is really valuable just to get more access to the books.
All right, Evan. So I've got two for you here on this one. I'll start with the money side of a quote cap. We have a soft cap right now. It's called a luxury tax number. Not that many teams go over it, and there's different layers of it. Don't we feel like it's already serving a pretty strong purpose? And is that why you're saying it's not going to be worth the fight? It's one thing if it's like we have this clear cut 15 plus teams just are spending 400 million and 15 other teams are spending 50. Like, yes, there's definitely a disparity. And there are a few teams that are soaring past the rest. But I mean, most of the teams really think about it. They talk about it. I know what the number is. And if anything, I was just surprised that the number didn't increase commensurate with the revenue and inflation last time around in the CBA as much as it probably should have.
Yeah, look, people do talk about the luxury tax as a soft cap. I think in reality, it's probably a bit exaggerated in so much as, you still have the Dodgers who, according to cost contracts I looked up last night, are 334 million, something like that, with their luxury tax payroll. You have the ability for Steve Cohen, for Mark Walter to still do what George Steinbrenner did back in the day. And that's to go out and spend as they see fit. And in a hard cap system, that's gone, right? There's no wiggle room where you're going to be going above it and irking your other owners because you're spending more than them. So yeah, the luxury tax system does, in practice, become kind of a line of demarcation. It is still a different thing.
All right, so one more for you on the books. What happens when a lot of teams are now becoming real estate deals and you own so much around it, but that doesn't have to count and can be a separate business, but clearly they're all tied together? Are they really going to be able to know everything that an owner owns and how they're profiting off of it? Restaurants, hotels, etc. It seems pretty complicated. I think that's one of the biggest battles, is that baseball's business has changed. There's so much volume that you can build a whole town around it, which is great often for the communities. But I just don't see how that money is going to be shared in a cap system.
No, Scotty, that's a good question. One of the things that gets argued about in the other leagues that have caps, and would be argued about in baseball if they had one, is what are you including in the revenues? That is a common argument. How do you count it? Um, in baseball, I imagine the owners would say our real estate developments that, yes, are reasonably somewhat dependent on your ballpark and the success of your team, are not part of that. Obviously another thing wouldn't be part of that is franchise sales. You'd be splitting, let's say, 50% of the year-to-year revenue, but when it comes time to sell the thing, that money's not reflected. So you're touching on something that is important. What is counted in the revenue sharing? And there are often disputes about that in the other leagues.
What about the floor? Because a lot of these teams that are asking for the cap, it's like, well, it's not fair because these teams that don't spend, or we don't have money to spend. The A's have, whatever they are, Sacramento A's, have a $60 million payroll. If they go up to 180, if that's the floor is 150, are we going to see teams, we gotta shut the doors because we can't afford to pay the floor? And if that's not the case, then why aren't they paying it now? Because they don't have to, or because they don't want to?
Yeah, I asked Rob Manfred about a cap back in early 2023, start of spring training, right when I found out about this economic reform committee and was reporting on it. And the point he made then was, I don't even know that I can get to a cap today, because you got to find a number that the small markets agree on for a floor. And that is part of the battle. Can you get them up to 150 to 180? Can you reward them in other ways such that they are willing to meet that spend amount? I think one of the things that gets interesting there is, yes, you would now be forcing some of these small market teams to spend more. But it's not really realistic to think that any of them would start to behave the way the other teams do, the other big market teams do, right? Like, the Pirates are still going to be the Pirates. They're going to spend toward the floor of whatever that floor is. And, the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Red Sox and the Mets will spend up to the maximum. And so what becomes important is, well, how big is that band? How much wiggle room is there between the smallest and the largest? So yes, the setting of the floor is not a trivial thing.
Yeah, and if I'm a big market team, I hate this, because I'm like, cool, we're just gonna bring ourselves down so that we can make it more competitive. No, you think because the owners want to bring salaries down, and that's more important?
Yeah, you would. I used to have that feeling too, that you're losing your competitive advantage, which I think to some degree, in an overall sense, is true. That there's a value in baseball to the narrative around the Mets being the spenders and the Dodgers being the spenders and the Yankees being the spenders. But from a pure dollars and cents standpoint, whoa boy, would those big market teams make a lot more money in a cap system. If you don't have to go out and pay Juan Soto $765 million, and you can get him for, I don't know, whatever. If the limit on a contract is 5 years, that's a lot less money you have to commit to get the star player. So in the long run, these big market teams would do quite well.
Right. You can become much more of a profit machine. There you go. Top five? You got one?
I just want to finish. It's a great article, Evan. I think you do a fantastic job. When I hear small markets, they don't spend, these big markets spend, they can spend. It bothers me to God's end. They say, oh, I'm a small market team, I can't spend. You got the money, man. I don't understand why these small market teams always come out and say, oh, we don't have a chance at Juan Soto. Everybody does. Like, you do. You got the money to spend. You're just making up an excuse. In my opinion, it just drives me out the roof.
If you couldn't tell, Evan, Todd played for the Pirates once, so he experienced this firsthand.
It's not, and I'm not saying I should have made the money either. I'm just saying for others. Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah, Todd, you deserve every payday you get.
Thank
Look,
you.
the books are not open, and so when owners say we cannot afford this or I can't afford to go out get this guy, we are taking them at their word. And it's one of the age old fights. It's well, the small markets can't compete. Prove it.
Yeah.
What is true, whether or not it is reasonable that they say that, the reality is they don't go out and spend it. And that is a fact of life. But then the conversation turns to, well, in a cap system, are they going to behave differently? And that's kind of what I was getting at before. They would
Yeah.
probably spend to the floor or maybe a little above it. But if all of a sudden the idea is that everybody's going to really be on this even playing field, that's just not reality.
Yeah.
And unless the
Exactly.
cap and the floor we're so close together. So there's a lot of stories to be done in the future here on how caps work and the different elements of it, the different arguments about it. I was really trying to stay away from that today because it is so intricate.
Yeah.
There are so many effects to go through.
Yeah, you would
There'll
see.
be a stoppage before that happens. There's not
Right.
the players will never let that happen.
Also for a floor, you would see teams take on crappy contracts from the bigger market teams so they can, spend it on other guys and they would get prospects out of it. It would be super fun. The one thing I don't care about is NBA salary capness is not fun to follow. So I hope we don't have that. Evan, thank you for the time. Obviously, there's plenty for people to dive into. And happy holidays, man. You survived the streets. Nobody came to video bomb this thing.
We only had one guy tell me to move, and we only had one set of leaves falling on my head. So I think it's a victory. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Exactly. I got a spot in New York. That's called a good day. We'll be right back, FT fam. Go check out Evan's article in The Athletic.
I was one of the few Yankees fans who was not heartbroken when Juan Soto signed with the Mets, especially when I saw the final number of $765 million. The tandem of Judge and Soto was amazing to watch. They combined for 99 home runs. Soto walking in front of Judge and then Judge hitting a 2-run home run in the first inning. It happened about 15 times last year, and it was amazing, and it just got the game started off great, and you just love to see the battles early on. Soto was clutch. He was probably the most clutch hitter on the team other than Stanton in the postseason. He hit the big home run to put the Yankees in the World Series. But I knew, and every Yankees fan who's honest with themselves knew that he was going to be difficult to re-sign and that the price was going to be such that if you did re-sign him, it was going to basically leave the Yankees with some of the holes and the deficiencies that we saw cost them the World Series. So what you're really asking me is, would I like the entertainment of Soto and Judge back-to-back, historic, or would I rather the Yankees have a better shot to win the World Series? And if I'm being honest as a fan, as much as I love Juan Soto, I'd rather see the Yankees have a more complete team. I'm a kid of the 90s. I loved watching the team that would battle and, scrape by and play that quote-unquote National League style game. That doesn't really exist as much anymore. But I really loved watching those teams that were more complete. I missed the Scotty Bros and the Tino Martinez's. Not everybody needs to be a 40 home run guy. To me, the main guy who's untouchable is Jason Dominguez. The Martian, I've been a big fan of his for a while, following through the minor leagues. When he came up a couple of years ago, he set the world on fire for about 7 games, and then he tore his UCL, had to have surgery. He missed the first part of last year, and then he was like a rocket, just coming back in through the minor leagues on his rehab assignment. He played great in AAA. He had great numbers. He hit over 300. The power was there. He stole a ton of bases. Then he came up to the major leagues and couldn't catch a fly ball. And I think that affected his whole game. He made a couple of errors early. I don't know if it was the triple deck syndrome, coming from the minor leagues and not being used to, the wind whirling around the dome in Safeco and Oakland, where he had some mistakes. And then Yankee Stadium, he gets put in left field. He's a natural center fielder. So it kind of fell apart for him. And so people are down on him, but I still think a switch hitter in today's game who has power from both sides and who's a patient hitter with speed, I think you got to keep him. And right now he's penciled in to be a cheap corner outfielder. They're probably going to play Bellinger in center, although there was just a report, I believe it was from Brian Hoke, who said that it's fake news that Belly was told he's going to play center field for sure. So Belly's still an option at first base. That would allow Dominguez to be in center, and then maybe you go get a left fielder like Santander or something along those lines.
All right, let's hit That's What He Said. This is big. Some breaking news. In the city of Chicago, Sammy Sosa was the man during the late 90s, early 2000s, a legend in Chicago, but he has not had a good relationship with the ball club. Jesse Rogers with the breaking news that Sosa essentially put out an apology. And here's the tweet. He said, former Cub Sammy Sosa, who has been estranged with the team, put out a statement, a portion here. There were times I did whatever I could to recover from injuries in an effort to keep my strength up to perform over 162 games. I never broke any laws, but in hindsight, I made mistakes and I apologize. And the Cubs already, have responded. And I think there's two separate issues here, guys, but help me out. I'm not like the most well-versed on this one. And here's the whole letter from Sammy. There clearly was a lot of dissension with Sammy and the organization, and they weren't going to let him be a part of the org, coming back to stuff like the Cubs Fest, the ballpark, etc., without an apology, right? That has now been handled. It seems like the Cubs have already responded and said this is good, right? This was pre-coordinated. The part in the apology that's weird, of course, is I did whatever I could to overcome things and stay on the field, but I didn't break any laws. Are PEDs against the law? Can I pop a steroid in my butt, or is that against the law? Pretty sure it's illegal, isn't it?
That's where I was kind of like the disconnect there. Break any laws? I don't know where that part of it is. I think it is a statement. Maybe he wants to get back in baseball in the major leagues. Maybe he wants to do something, with the organization. For me, I thought this was already done. This is water under the bridge, but I guess not. This has still been going on
for a long time, Todd.
For a long time. Yeah,
dude.
I remember hearing about it and just kind of, for me personally, just sweeping it under the rug. Like, oh man, this is weird. This is crap. They'll figure it out. And I guess it's still going on. So, yeah, back in that time, people did whatever they could to stay on the field. Of course, I mean that was what was going on, and I thought if he wouldn't have said I never broke any laws in hindsight, I thought he should have just said I made a mistake and apologized. That would have been probably enough. But breaking the laws in hindsight, I just don't know where that came from. That's all.
Why even mention that? That's my question.
That's what I mean.
I like the rest of the article, but why even say it? Or the apology, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm fine with the apology. Let's all be friends. Let's bring a dude back to the ballpark that people want to see. I mean, maybe there's some legalese in there that I'm unaware of, but I don't even know why you'd throw that out there.
Maybe.
I don't get any of this. I don't understand why the Cubs feel like, oh, we're the upstanding citizens of Chicago. Like, we could never have a steroid user that's part of the organization. Like, there's plenty of dudes that have reclamated their name, their association with steroids. I mean, look at what A-Rod's done. The dude's everywhere. Fox is just like, whatever. We'll hire him. Guys, like, why? To me, there has to be something more in the organization.
There is.
Yes, there has to be.
No, there is. That's why he said he apologized for his actions. I think he did some things and said some things to people behind the scenes that ticked him off enough. And I don't know. I've heard a couple things that I can't even really share, but I think there was some mistreatment. There were some wrongs on his end, and they just felt like, hey, if you want to be part of this again, you need to apologize for that. So I'm fine with that part of it. The part that I just get confused about is the mixing in of the laws.
Yeah.
Like what? Because you only were involved with PEDs outside of the country. I mean, no, you were playing. I'm sure he was popping in the States. So I don't know. For me, it just say, hey, I had some issues. I apologize for how I treated some people within the org. I'm back. The extra sentence there is like, I don't want to admit it, but I'm sorry for everything else.
Yeah, it's an apology and then not a little bit. It is an apology, but it's there's definitely stuff behind the scenes. He might, like you said, he could have mistreated some people the wrong way. Could have done something even deeper back then that nobody knew about. Like same thing. Let's just not talk about it, move on. And boom, once he was done, get the heck out.
If we're only talking about steroids here, we're not talking about other extracurricular things that, hurting people's feelings, doing other stuff. People that did steroids during that time, that I know that I would consider friends that did steroids and played baseball. They're not ashamed. They're not sorry. I've never met any of them that are like, dang it, I wish I had not hit 42 home runs instead of 21. I wish I had not gotten a 3-year contract when I probably was a minor league dude that was just bouncing around. So to issue an apology, that's why you hear I'm really sorry about the decisions I made, but everybody was doing it. Or I'm really sorry about making doing steroids. I hope kids can look to me as a hero still because I did so many good things in my career. No, they're not sorry. Stop with that. Stop asking them to be sorry. Other people need to stop asking people who did steroids to be sorry. They did it. They made the choice. If you want to judge them for that and you want to take away their accolades just because you didn't do it or you didn't accomplish it, to me, you can save that.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Love
And
that.
the A-Rod
That's
example.
a great call.
The A-Rod example is good too. I don't think anyone did more damage with the steroid situation than A-Rod. I admit it, then I don't, and I'm suing everyone and all that stuff. And then it's like, I'm back. So yeah, I separate the two. For me, we can have a PED steroid debate, Hall of Fame, the whole deal. But I think for Chicago purposes, Sosa back in there, people can be around him. Like that's all cool. I'm good. We're fans of that. I just the obviously we're going to be critical on here. The part of the apology that is weird is, but I didn't break any laws. Don't arrest me. I'm like, no one's coming after you, but we don't need you to say that you didn't. We get what you're saying, and we don't believe you. So just say I'm sorry. Come back. Let's have a good time.
It's funny that this all came out because when in 2009, I played in the Dominican Republic. And guys were getting B12 shots as like the season was going on. And all of a sudden, we're getting into the playoff hunt. And the B12 shots turned into, oh no, you're still playing. Like you shouldn't be getting this B12 shot. Like this B12 shot is not a B12 shot. Like, it's just, it happens. It was part of it. This was in 2009 when it was illegal in the game. So, like, it's all like, yeah. Anyway, it's all relative.
That's a good story. All right. If you're watching this afterward, comment below. We'll be right back to actually go over a much more positive story. The worst players in baseball in 2024. Sure, there's some juicy questions, pun intended, in here. So,
Todd, did you ever
real quick?
Because what was your first year? When did you get drafted? 12?
I got drafted in 07.
7? Okay, so it was sort of out by that time.
Sort of, yeah.
It was more discreet by that time.
It was like whoever was doing it was very good at hiding it.
Yeah. At that time, it was more like HGH and things that dudes just weren't coming into spring training like.
There was very few doing that was like that. And you knew the ones. You see them just walk in, you're like, whoa. How you doing?
The telltale sign was the dude that never drank any water. And then in spring training, he comes in and he's got a gallon water jug every single day. And you're like, nope.
It happens in Scott's profession too. The next year when baseball starts, wherever he was working at, and they guy was walking in, like, yo, dog, your voice changed. You got bigger. I need some of that. Your endurance. You're lasting 6 hours and not 4 on TV. This is incredible. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah. Performance enhancement in Hollywood is huge. There are all kinds of crap out there. You think they all look perfect until they're 85 years old just doing nothing?
And with their job profession for months and months on end to do one film, I mean, I would need a little booster.
They got all the good stuff. They're leading the charge in that.
Organic though, only organic, right?
Yeah, organic, of course. It's got to come from the
Whole Foods.
Everything comes from the ground, technically. God. All right, so in a minute, we'll come back with Jacob, who is a YouTube creator. The channel's called Made the Cut. His videos are really good, and we're going to go over one of them. It's called Worst Players of 2024. All right. Jacob Rogers, my friend, is the creator behind Made the Cut on YouTube. And he puts out awesome videos, a lot of really deep dives, numbers wise, into some past legends, and then a lot of current event stuff. So, Jacob, first off, great to have you. Great job on everything that you do over at Made the Cut. Encourage everyone to go check out your videos. And we particularly chose one today that the guys want to kick around. So first off, thanks for joining us, but give us a little intro into one of your latest videos and we'll ask some follow-ups.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. I mean, it's an honor to get to talk to a couple of guys I grew up watching, as well as you, of course. I will say, generally when I'm doing a video like this, right, like when we're talking about the worst player in every team, I'm going to build almost like a set of things I'm looking for a worst player, right? A set of rules. Like, I don't think it's fair to look at a guy, let's say, who's played 40 games and say that he could be considered the worst player for his team, right? So I make like a list of that, and then I'll go through and look at some criteria. I do look at some of the newer age stuff, like the WARs, OPS pluses, stuff like that. But I mean, I do consider stuff like batting average as well, slash lines and stuff like that. You try to balance it all out, right? I am somebody who values new age stuff, but on top of that, I mean, you can't throw out the old stuff just because, you do have some of these new valuation metrics, in my opinion.
All right, so I got a bone to pick with the Rangers. Jack Leiter, my boy, he lives right there. Jersey guy. He didn't get a whole year, and why is he the worst guy on the Rangers?
Honestly, I batted him around a lot, right? Because it was like almost like I mentioned that you had to play at least a third of the year. For him, he pitched half of his games were starts and half of his games were relief appearances. So I had a little bit of a different standard for relievers. Relievers had to be around 15 games, 20 games, and the starters had to be around like 15 starts. So it added up to being around 15 games. But when it came down to it, I mean, one of the things I said in the beginning of this video, beginning of all my videos, is basically that final discretion's up to me because I am the creator. So it's like, as much as I do love Jack Leiter, I mean, I've been rooting for him since back he was in college. He went viral for a YouTube video a few years back as well. So I kind of got introduced to him early. A nearly 9 ERA and like about 40 innings. Like I kind of couldn't justify putting anyone else in there when you give up almost a run in that time. But I mean, like I said, I do love his stuff. I think that he has a chance to be almost like Kumar Rocker. They both went to Vandy. I think they both have a good chance to be really good on that Texas team.
All right, so Jacob, let's show some of the selections that you made on the screen so people can start to get their blood boiling if need be, or be like, yeah, that is spot on. I mean, most of the blood boiling is actually going to be like, I watched this guy all year and it was painful. So we'll just throw up a few lists. We can show AL or NL East. We'll go there first. Taijuan Walker, Adam Duvall on the Braves, Walker on the Phillies, of course, DJ Stewart on the Mets, Nats with Eddie Rosario, Nick Gordon for the Marlins. And Kratz, also, as I'm reading some of these, is there a particular player that you wanted to ask about? Because we can show that board of that player too. I mean, on the AL East, we've got DJ LeMahieu for the Yankees, Craig Kimbrell coming from the Orioles, Emmanuel Valdez for the Red Sox, Christopher Morel for the Rays. The Blue Jays have Bo Bichette. But let's bring in Kratz for a sec. Kratz, is there a particular player you wanted to ask about?
I wasn't going to ask my particular player first. I was going to ask about the fact that you chose WAR, because we have that discussion all the time. I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, how is WAR calculated? Because unless you have a degree from NASA, you couldn't do it. So that's fine. But if you said, okay, I got to take WAR out of it, what stat would you go to next? And then I'll ask my particular one person.
If I had to go to a stat after that, honestly, it's tough, right? Because when you're trying to build like a look at these guys, right? A lot of it's the overall nature of their game. Like, I mean, some of these guys, like I think I actually picked for the Marlins, Tim Anderson. I mentioned Nick Gordon at the beginning, but I did pick Tim Anderson. He was good defensively, right? But he was horrible at the plate. So I probably would default to something like an OPS plus, which again is a fairly advanced stat in and of itself. But from there, I mean, if I'm looking at almost like a more basic stat as an overall judgment for a position player, probably OPS, I think, is the one I look at the most.
Okay, I like that. And when you come up with a list like this, I need you to come up with the overall worst pitcher and the overall worst hitter too, because the whole time I was watching the video, I'm like, oh man, I need the one person that was the worst, because I can go through and look at the list and see, okay, Brandon Drury had the what would I say? The worst WAR, the highest worst WAR, I think it's -2. But who would be your worst position player and your worst pitcher from this list? Overall MVPs.
Well, it's funny enough. You literally hit on it. I'm actually doing a video on a worst pitcher today. I've been going through and kind of doing that. Brandon Drury, in my opinion, was the worst hitter, and I did a video, a shorter video, a couple days back on him. And I'm actually working on one today for Bobby Miller, who would be my worst pitcher, unfortunately. It's crazy, man, to see him go from having like a 99 mile per hour average pitching velocity and having one of the best changeups in baseball to throwing up again like a near 9 WAR in about 56 innings. It's crazy. He allowed more earned runs last year than he had strikeouts in 13 starts. Like, absolutely nuts. But again, I mean, kind of like Leiter, I really hope he can turn it around, man, because both him and then their center fielder from last year as well, or the year before that as well, rookie. Man, I really want to see the Dodgers have some of those guys develop, because they could be big stars on a team that already has a lot of big guys, including Hall of Famers on the team. So for sure, I want to see them be more well-rounded.
I like that. And I also, I like how in the video you're kind of like, well, this guy's number wasn't as bad, but he's making $20 million a year. So you think about the like Taijuan Walker compared to Bobby Miller, who Bobby Miller is on the league minimum and Taijuan Walker's on like a billionaire's minimum. So my gripe with you is the Wader, Tyler Wade. Tyler Wade's on this list. Did you add him on the list? And you kind of mentioned it in your video. The Padres didn't have a lot to choose from. So did you just pick him because of the WAR, or because I saw Campusano's numbers and I was like, I feel like Campusano maybe should have been on there, but maybe it's because T. Wade and I are friends. I don't know.
Well, first of all, I will say I really like Tyler Wade. I'd love seeing him run the bases a little bit more. Dude's fast as hell. He's got some great versatility. The only reason I ended up picking him, and you mentioned on it yourself, the Padres didn't actually have a lot of like really poor performers in the team. They had some really good depth last year. Speaking of almost like the Dodgers right there, they had some really good depth in a way superior even to the Dodgers in terms of their overall depth. And I really liked Campusano a year before. Last year was disappointing, but at the end of the day, he's a catcher, right? And you, Kratz, you know, as a catcher, right? The standards are a little bit different. His hitting numbers, I guess, overall were a little bit better than Wade's. But when you're a guy who's like almost like that utility guy, and I even mentioned that, like, you don't have a high expectation for him. But if you have to pick somebody, I guess you got to go with the guy who had like a negative 0.6 WAR, if I'm not mistaken, like 70-some games. But again, it speaks more to the depth of the team than it does to anything to do with Wade, who, again, I'm a big fan of.
All right. Jacob, this is the last thing. It's more of a comment than a question. I want you to look at this face, because over the parts of 11 seasons that I played in the big leagues, I would have probably been on your list about 9 of those seasons. Okay, so just so you know, when you're doing this and you're putting it down, I have a mom who has a Google search of my name. She would have found your video and been like, I really don't like that Jacob person. I do think Erik should play better. Okay, so just so you know, all these people on this list, they have parents, they have friends, and they're not big Jacob fans, but they did watch your video, so that's good.
Fair enough, man. I have to say, I mean, you had some highlights, man. The knuckleball stuff, and that's one of the questions I wanted to ask coming on here. I mean, do you think you had a nastier knuckleball than Todd?
Oh, easily. Todd's was a gimmick. Todd's a gimmick. Todd's was an everyday player. I came out and had an elite pitch. That was the only time that I was an above-average hitter when I was pitching. That was the only time, because I was listed as a pitcher, and so my hitting was way above the average pitcher's hitting.
Oh yeah, you're pumping 85 too. I remember that. Some of those highlights. That was pretty impressive for a guy that, coming out of the.
That's easy. That's easy.
Really?
Coming from behind a dish. Yeah, that's easy. Todd, he ain't got nothing on me. I would definitely have struck Todd out. I know that.
What's your ERA in the big leagues?
Dog, I got like 7 innings. We figured it out before. Hang on. I'll find it. I gave a few runs.
Yeah, I didn't give up any, and I got a strikeout. So there you have it. Scott, your question next, bud.
Thank you.
I have 3 strikeouts. 5.4, 5.14 ERA.
There you go.
I'm in the Hall of Fame. Scott, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I couldn't pitch or hit, but I can ask questions. So first was more of a comment, and then I'll ask about a particular player. So just for people to get an idea of how Jacob puts these together and really voice them. You have a good voice. It's kind of calm. It makes it easy to go through the video. But I wrote down some of the words, because you're going through so many players, and they all had pretty bad seasons. And you're not just going to say every single person was bad. So there was a baffling, there was atomically bad, There was undeniably awful, abysmal, unholy, atrocious. And my favorite line was about a team. He said the Rays lineup was a roster full of players you couldn't pick out of a police lineup. But he said it so casually. So you're just like, okay, it's not like a total rip fest. It's just like, just being honest, no one knew these guys. So anyway, that was my comment. My question is about a particular player on this list who I had to actually look up and go, damn, I was going to pay attention to him and I didn't pay close enough attention. Noelvi Marte got popped for roids. We've barely seen him in the bigs. He was a monster in the minors. Keyword monster. Comes back. Looks terrible. So can you give us a little insight on what you saw there? And for Reds fans in particular, I'm wondering if they should be concerned that they didn't get to see the real version of him until just now.
Honestly, I think that this ends up being a question that's a contemporary question with roids. I mean, you guys were talking about roids before I came on as well. And I mean, as I'm sure you guys have talked to some of those guys in the past that have done roids and stuff, it's like it's not going to have that huge of an effect on like with an 80-game suspension or something like that. It's like he was like pumped full of stuff like they were back in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? So to me, it's almost like Tatis Jr. He came back in 2023. He had kind of a rough year at the plate. I think it's harder to get back into the swing of things, having all that time off at the plate than it is in the field. And Marte's never been a great fielder, but I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily something to worry about for him. Honestly, I'd be way more concerned with the walk to strikeout ratio, right? Because that's something where it's like the quality of contact, all that. I think that'll recover. I don't think he was a player built on roids. I think more than likely it was something like a winter league supplement type of situation. I doubt that he was intentionally doing it. But with that being said, I mean, if you can't control your walk to strikeout ratio at the big league level, especially when you're a third baseman, right, who's got to get on base a decent portion of the time to justify maybe not the most defensive value, that's what I'd really be concerned about. But I mean, I think it's kind of early. I mean, this is his second year. He had that pretty significant struggle to do with roids and being out all that time. I wouldn't close the book on him yet, but I think probably for 2025, something's going to be in the middle of what 2023 was, which was really impressive. And then 2024, hopefully at least he can build on something, maybe get close to an 800 OPS.
All right, Jacob, I gotta argue a little bit of what you said. You said they were pumping themselves full of stuff in the early 2000s. I saw the early 2000s and the gorilla, vials that guys were getting and juicing themselves up. And then I saw the synthetic stuff later on. The synthetic stuff was way better, way safer. And so anybody who does it now is way better and it's better timed. Before it was like, dudes are just like, yeah, I just want to get big biceps and hit dingers. And it not only does it affect you physically, well, I guess eyes are physical, your vision, your reaction time changes on this stuff. So not making good plate decisions, not making good, reactions as quick, that's the game. You can concentrate better on that stuff. Everything is enhanced. I even saw guys need to go down prescription in their contacts when they were on the sauce.
That's crazy. I didn't really know about the eye affecting stuff. I mean, I think most people, and this is also an interesting moment, I think, for some people who are listening to this, we conceptualize it as almost like you get an extra 20 feet to your fly balls, right? That's the effect, right? Or you get an extra 0.5 on your sprint speed or something. You're not really thinking about it in terms of like being able to have sharper vision and stuff like that. That's crazy. With that being said, Marte, I mean, I will say that I do think we saw it in the minor leagues the year before, kind of like what Scott said. He does have a lot of raw potential, right? So I do think that he is better than what he showed last year. But I mean, with that being said, I do appreciate that comment. It might be a bit more of a decline even than an 800 OPS. That's really fair.
Yeah, it's a science project. We'll see what happens with him. There's some really other, interesting insights, obviously, from others. We mentioned earlier on the show, Maldonado. There's a good discussion about Jose Abreu, but it doesn't qualify. So anyway, that's enough. Everyone, go watch the video. Check it out later on Made the Cut. Just search it on YouTube. Jacob, great to have you on here, man. I'd love to have you back to slice up another video, all right?
Sounds great, man. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you. You're the man. Happy holidays, FT fam. Be right back. All right, the time has come. I'm really excited for this because we do our BetMGM segment every day, and we look back at the 2024 season. We have win totals, and we have division odds. All the good stuff just came out. So let's look at the New York Yankees up first for Todd Father. Right now, Todd Father, their win total is placed at 93.5. 93.5 for the New York Yankees. Now we're in the midst of the offseason. We know they're going to do more. How are we feeling about the current number, everyone?
So that would be, what's that? 68 losses. Am I correct on my math here? Or am I off by a little bit? 68. Oh man, these are tricky because you take a team like the Astros. They're like, oh man, they're hitting the over, and they did well when they should have probably won more games than none. It's very hard because we don't know exactly who else they're going to pick up, who else is going to.
That's the fun of it.
Yeah,
just right now, knowing the whole thing is, can you predict the future, right? That's what you're doing here. But can you help decide, what you think the Yankees are going to do? And is it going to put them over the top here? Observing what the rest of the division is going to do in the meantime. I know Kratz he's just waiting. What do you got, Kratz?
Well, let me finish. I think I think right now they're going to be around. Oh man, dude! I think they're going to win 95 games. Right? If I had to talk right, nice. So I'm going over.
Okay,
nice. I love that. I love that out of you, Todd, because they're going to win 92 games, and that's not a knock on the Yankees. That's not a knock on the Yankees. It's a knock on. I mean, it's showing to me the Orioles are better than people are feeling about them, how their season ended. So you can't discount the Orioles. And to me, anything over 90 wins in the AL East is going to be huge. I'm taking the under here. And I'm not going to buy it yet because if they add one more big piece, I think that might go up to 94. So I'm taking the under.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under as well. I think it's more in the 90-ish range because I think the division's going to be better. BetMGM account holders, get yourself a Pro Football Same Game Parlay Boost Token. Score a bigger payout if your wager with the SGP Boost Token hits. It's part of 7 days of parlays from BetMGM. Happy holidays. This is day 3. Gambling problem or concern? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In the weeds today, we're digging into legendary Hall of Famer Barry Larkin, former Cincinnati Red. Just 19 little seasons in the bigs. Big dude. 9-time Silver Slugger, former MVP, a 12-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glover. Elected into the Hall of Fame in 2012 and was part of a group that kind of changed the perspective on what the position looks like. But Todd Father, your thoughts on Barry? And I know he's around the team quite a bit now. He does, broadcasts some of the games as an analyst. But did you know him well back then? Was he around the team? And how much was he beloved in Cincinnati when you were there?
And I think you hit that well, beloved. He was a guy, first time I ever met him, you see him. I think I was at a Reds Fest in the winter, and just a guy where when he walked in the room, he caught your attention. And one of those guys like, oh, there he is, and he was kind of under the radar, but not really, wasn't the biggest of shortstops. Back then you got guys like the Cal Ripkins and the shortstops were bigger. He was a smaller guy. It was kind of separate when it came to the American League and National League, considering like the American League was the shortstops, the guys, and they can mash and do this. But Barry Larkin was an absolute stud, an absolute beast. And he, overall his numbers were just as good, if not better than some of them. A Hall of Famer for sure.
Yeah, he was a beast. All right, so let's run through the Hall of Fame journey that he took us through for Reds fans. There he is. How good was Barry Larkin? Signature's clean, too. 1995 is when he won the NL MVP award. For you war nerds out there, he finished with a 70.5 number. That is above the mark. There's that delineation. What is the mark? Is it in the high 50s, I want to say? And if you're above that mark, usually the guys get
55 or 56.
Yeah, so he's good. And he kept the batting average nice and tight for the old school crowd. I mean, he was close to 300 for his career. On base percentage, 371. He was on base 37% of the time. the Gold Glove, the Silver Slugger, just the all-around shortstop and a 5-tool player. And now we're running through the baseball reference page a little bit. I always like to check out the OPS plus action. Kratz put up a 155 number actually in 1996, the year after he won the MVP award. And then the stolen base numbers too were pretty solid at some points, including 51 of them in 1995, which looked nice and shiny back then. But what do you like?
I mean, I always go directly to the walks and strikeouts. If we put that graphic back up, if you're watching right now, the bottom of the screen shows everything you need to know about a Hall of Fame player. The WAR, we don't know what it means, but all that stuff, almost a 300 hitter, just a bit shy of 200 homers. I'm sure you wish he had 2 more, but it's the walks to the strikeouts. He had 939 walks in his career, 817 strikeouts. The most he ever struck out in a season was giggity, 69. Like, you sit there and you go, this dude's getting on base. This dude, and I think it took him a little bit because he doesn't have those big numbers. He doesn't have 500 homers. He doesn't have 3,000 hits. But I think his career is really exemplified because very few of these players matter anymore. And so we lose the fact that a player like this was not the norm, and he was elite during his time. You look at all those all-star games. You look at the fact that he made an all-star team his last season. You look at the fact that, yes, his OPS plus isn't super high. He's not a 100 WAR player that's guaranteed in right away. But the more time he's out of the game, and it took him a few more years to get voted in, the more you appreciate what he actually did out on the field, because we just don't have this. We don't have dudes like this right now that are in the game, and he did it for 19 seasons, which is bananas.
You don't think we have comps? I'm not talking about swing. I'm talking about the production.
No.
We don't. No. That gets complicated. But I'm talking. You don't think there's a shortstop that's putting together the kind of production that Barry Larkin does right now?
Not the same way. And I know I'm really
what do you
waiting.
Mean not the same way?
I'm really waiting. I have a higher weight put on the walks to strikeouts because dudes are encouraged. Let me pull it up here. They're encouraged to. So he had a season of 20 homers, 33 dingers, and 17 dingers. Okay. Now teams are going to say, I need you to get to that 33 home run plateau every season. I need you at the 20 home run plateau every season. That's just going to automatically put more strikeouts on your ledger. I don't care what anybody says. Very few people can do it without adding the home runs. I mean, can't add strikeouts without adding home runs.
It's a different game though now. So to be fair, I mean, Gunnar Henderson, all around talent.
Way better.
There's what do you mean way better?
Gunnar Henderson's way better. Like he has a variety, but he's going to punch out a ton. He's not going to.
So you're just saying the strikeouts in particular, right? Because obviously
the strikeout. That's what I'm saying.
Superstar shortstop. These are MVP candidates in our game right now.
Yes,
both top 10 players in the league in the past year. But you're just saying the strikeout part. But it's a different game. There also weren't as many swinging.
That's why I'm saying there's nobody. That's why I'm saying there's nobody. There's no it's hard to comp somebody like this because this type of player doesn't exist now. I mean, that's what I said. And you said, well, there's no comp, there's no similarities. There's people who are playing legit MVP style shortstop, but they're pumping out 35 dingers. Gunnar Henderson, Corey Seager. Look at what Carlos Correa. Carlos Correa would be the closest that I came to finding somebody, and I don't have it up right now, but I can tell you what he did. To me, he has the ability to lower his strikeouts, and he's still up above 100 five different times in his career. So I'm saying that style of player is around still, but they don't have the production numbers are not the same. And that's why I think we need to celebrate a guy like Barry Larkin because we just don't see it right now.
That's why we're doing it. If you have a question about Barry, we'll take it during a TV break. Subscribe to the YouTube channel too, so you can say hello to us and send us questions, and we'll be right back. All right, let's keep this going. So is there a hitter in either of your minds right now that has a similar hitting profile? Now take the position part out of it. Like for me, I was thinking about Jose Ramirez. Pretty low strikeout numbers from what I recall. I'm going off the top of my head, and yet still gives you the pop, puts together a nice average, doesn't walk a lot.
The first guy that came to my head when you said comparison would be a Bogarts to me. You guys might think differently. I don't know. I just think kind of similar, the way they play defense, the way they go about their business a little bit. They both are very productive hitters too as well. So not saying he is, but I'm just saying, the types of similarities.
I'm looking that up right now. I'm not hating it right out of the gate. The person I thought of, person I thought of was Bregman. I know he plays a different position. He's got more thump than Barry does, but I truly believe that some guys, just the way that they swung, shorter swing, compact swing, had they played in this era, they would have been able to hit more homers. You got to think, Barry played his entire career on what? Turf. You put the ball in the air, there's a chance you're getting out. You put the ball on the ground, there's a chance you're getting a double in the gap on the ball that the shortstop dove for. Like, that ball was rolling, and that was real turf. I'm not talking about grass turf either. That was like concrete turf. So it's different, especially, but the bat-to-ball skills, to me, I would say a Bregman type.
It's good. All right, this is fun. If you like this, let us know. If you're watching it after the fact, drop a comment and throw another player out there that we take a little deep dive into and ask the guys about. So we'll swing right back. Give us about 30 seconds and we'll slap. All right, let's slap. Big Christmas is almost here. That's all I'm going to say.
Love that.
John Kenzie Noel. If you're listening on the pod later on, John Kenzie Noel taking his nickname very seriously, dressing up as Santa. Big Christmas.
He could have saved that for Halloween.
Yeah, I guess he could have, but it's significant now. We need to get some gifts under that tree there so we can give them out to the kids. I love that, man. Take it seriously, man. I love that nickname. So good
I love
for
the
you.
glasses. The glasses are classic.
After he has a nice 10-year career and bops a bunch of homers, I want him in the WWE. And they're like, oh no, here comes Big Christmas.
Big Christmas.
He's dressed up in a Santa outfit and he just goes like, just whatever. At that point, he's ripped as hell and he just takes people out. I mean, he's what, 6'6"-ish? Oh. And a lot of people in baseball say, I mean, this is a top 3 size guy in the big leagues already. Obviously, you got Judge and Stanton, but he's right up there. He's not as chiseled as Giancarlo, but
he's stacked though. He's good.
Meat. Yeah.
6'3", 250.
Oh,
I'm giving him too much height.
Anybody,
that's my height.
anybody that
6'3".
played in the big leagues at 250, they must have been just absolute huge monster dudes, right, Todd?
Right on. I ain't giving nobody credit.
Kratz, you were the same. Are you 6'3", 250, Kratz, when you were playing?
6'5". 6'5", 250.
Oh,
My whole
6'5",
career.
250.
He's taller than me. I'm
wait.
6'3".
Wait, so are you Big Easter? What is this? I mean, you're bigger than Big Christmas.
He's Big Valentine's Day because he's a teddy bear.
Big soft. Big soft. Salvador Perez used to call me Oso Blanco. He's like, before there was a polar bear, he called me Oso Blanco. And my minor league teammates called me Mono Blanco. The white monkey.
Kratzy was a big donkey, big dog.
Well, if you're on YouTube right now, you get 3 more minutes of Big Donkey. We'll answer a few questions. Subscribe to the channel if you're on TV. We'll see you on Friday.
Kratz and I had to sit together on a bus.
Double up.
Man, I'm sorry for that.
Uncomfortable.
That was good.
Army threw out Mookie's name for the low swing and miss in his game.
I like that.
I love it.
I like that.
I love it. I looked up Xander too while you said that, Tom. Didn't realize. A lot lower walk and a lot more strikeouts than I thought. I just felt like every time I called a game, he knew what pitch was coming. Him and Jay Bruce, didn't matter what I called. Jay Bruce hit like 800 when I was catching.
Whoopsies. I told him what was coming. No, I'm just kidding. Your legs were too wide open. You got to tighten them up a little bit.
I couldn't close my legs anymore.
Anyway, Carlos asks another question. Which team would you like seeing both Burns and Castillo land at? Thank you. Great show. Thank you, Carlos. I'll go San Francisco for Burns. I'll go Boston for Castillo. What do you guys think?
I don't want anybody. No, I don't want him going to San Francisco.
What?
I'm going to say I never see him. We'll never see him play. I don't think it's a good fit. I will go.
What do you mean? Because you go to sleep too early?
No, I do go to sleep late, but
dude, he'll dominate in San Francisco.
We don't know. We don't know where this cat's going. We have no clue where he's going. It's all.
I think he's going to San Francisco. I think they're dancing right now. They're doing the dance where Boris is like 275 and the Giants are like 230, and they're the leading bidders. And but for Boris, he's just like, hey, this is my focus now. This is the big pitcher on the market. I'm going to try and push them because I feel like they really need him. San Francisco kind of feels like they're the front runner.
Hold on, I got someone on the line after what you just said. Hey, Pete Alonso, don't worry. Scott didn't mean that. He's not the full focus.
Scott didn't mean it.
He's the pitching focus, Pete. We love you. He's the pitching focus. Pete's going to have to wait a little, but yeah. What about Castillo?
Philly.
Yes.
Philly
Red
for
Sox.
Alec Bohm.
He's going to the Sox too. Watch out.
Well, he can only go to one team. You think he's going to the Red Sox? Castillo?
I think it'll be. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't think Boston wants to pay for the big pitching, so they trade for the guys. You get them on a little more of a discount.
He's still
and they've got the prospects to do it. No, I know, but it's not 37 or whatever Burns is going to get. All right, FT fam, Dodger Territory is coming up next. We're going to be back on Friday, us 3. So if you like us, leave a little like on the video you're watching right now, and then join us tomorrow live, 1 o'clock Eastern time.